Have you ever played a game and the balance just has you feeling like this? Well, you're not the first, it's certainly not the last. But why is game balance so hard to get right? Why is it that even the most beloved companies and developers can't get their games to good places? Let's talk about that, and we're going to start off with the players. Yes, surprisingly enough, you are included in this whole equation of a problem. Unfortunately for developers, the player base is what decides what the perfect balance is, and there's never a perfect agreement between players on what that is unless you have a player base of one, in which case... Take an asymmetrical game like Dead by Daylight, for example. I've played a ton of it. There's other videos on here about me playing it, so you know I play this quite a bit. One side thinks that the killer is favoured, you know, others think survivors is favoured, and others thinks, you know, game sucks for everyone, and neither side is balanced somehow. And the reality is you can't please every group, and you can't ignore them all. And if you do, you just end up making decisions that don't make sense, like nerfing add-ons to a killer that is already weak and underplayed, and then having to revert those changes before they even make it past the test servers. Anyway, in reality, developers have to find a sweet spot where they can try and make as much as the player base happy as possible while pissing off the other part too much, which isn't very easy to do because some of them are so opposite of the spectrum. So you've got to kind of find this middle ground where, you know, most people are happy, few people slightly pissed off, because reality is you're never going to avoid that. But that alone isn't really the issue when it comes to balancing, because if you just listen to the majority of the player base, you're probably going to keep most people happy, right? But that's not the only factor that really comes into this. It gets worse and more complicated. Any online game is tracking statistics. This is given, you know. Some games will publicly tell you this, some will hide it. You know, there's ones like Minecraft where you got the tracking there straight for you. You can't really disable all of it. I think you can still disable some of it. I'm not sure if that's not a thing anymore, but whatever. But most online games are tracking statistics of you, and which ones they are depending on what game you're playing, of course. Like if you're playing a Call of Duty game, it's going to be tracking stats on your weapons that you're using, the equipment you're using, the perks you're using. I'm sorry, I haven't played Call of Duty since like Black Ops 2. I don't know if perks are even still a thing in those games, forgive me. But yeah, they're tracking these sort of things to know what is popular, what's overperforming and what's underperforming. If you take a game like Hearthstone, a card game, is, you know, how often a card when played wins a game, how often it's kept in a starting hand of a player, how early it's played, when is it played, what decks are beating other decks, and that sort of thing. And then you got ones like League of Legends where you win rates of certain champions, win rates of certain items, you know, that sort of stuff, or when you get a buff from a dragon, you win rate on that sort of thing. And these statistics can be a great asset to developers. They can be used in balancing very easily, but the problems can arise from using them as well, especially any over-reliance on them, for example. Because using just purely statistics to balance any game, you forget about the players who play it, because statistics can only tell you so much, and especially if you're looking at it wrong. So if we take a made-up example, this doesn't really exist, but you know, let's use Hearthstone, right? Say a card has an 80% win rate when played, right? You would look at that stat alone and say that's pretty high, right? And going off that statistic alone, you would most likely nerf that card. But then, what if that same card also has a play rate of only 0.2%? A very, very small play rate. Suddenly the context of that win rate is changed and can have multiple reasons on why that win rate is so high. It could be because it's a win more card, where once you play it, you're already winning, and the 20% is, you know, playing it when you're not winning and then you lose. So it could be that. So players only really play it when they're winning, and they just win more. It could be because it's a high costing card and people are losing before they can even play the card. Does that mean that the decks it's playing in are usually not going on for long enough, and therefore don't have the tools to win. There could be multiple reasons. It's not usually in the card game, but in other examples, maybe something is too complex to use and hard to understand, so the people who are using it are the only ones who are good with it and understand how to use it properly. As you can see, just adding one other stat can change the entire meaning of another, but in reality games have tons and tons of stats, and putting them all together and reading them correctly alone would take single developer ages to do, especially in these more complex games, you know. You think of League of Legends, there are tons and tons of stats that just go into a single character's win rate, like what items are it building, what start is it doing. I don't know if there's actually alternative starts. I don't really play MOBAs anymore. We've played a few over the years, but just adding different statistics to it makes it more complex. So just reading these statistics alone takes forever, and then you have to decide what to do with them afterwards. These statistics don't actually tell you what to do, what to change, what to nerf, what to buff, and if we admit it, most of these balance teams aren't as big as we like to be to make these changes correctly, and hence the mistakes that these statistics can lead to. And finally, the last thing I kind of want to talk about is kind of similar to the first one, but player feeling. It's kind of similar to the first one because we just went over generic players, but I kind of want to just go back to it real quick, because player feeling can actually have a big effect on something that should be changed, especially when compared to statistics. Like say something has a 50% win rate, right? But people hate facing it. Every time they face it, they're like, oh god, I hate this, I don't want to play against this, it sucks to play against. But the reality is it isn't actually that high of a win rate. Maybe it was even like 30%. What does that say about, I don't know, the killer in Dead by Daylight or the gun in Call of Duty? What does that say about that? It says that it's unfun and should be changed. It should be buffed, yes, but it should be changed on its functionality. These are usually functionality problems. This can come to something like, currently in Dead by Daylight, there's a perk that literally makes survivors run faster. Is it overpowered? Not really, no. It's only 3% faster, that's not a big stat. But when it comes to high-level players who know how to use this properly, and high-level killers who are used to facing people at a certain speed and know how to prepare for it, suddenly everything is thrown off and it's unfun to play against. Because everything has suddenly been changed, it's flipped on its head, and usually this is a good way, but suddenly these 5-second chases that used to be guaranteed by killers because people made mistakes or were just, you know, inevitable. Because in Dead by Daylight, at the end of chases are eventually inevitable. They are extended by a duration, which means a match can completely be turned on its head, because when you're playing as a killer, if you've never played Dead by Daylight, every second matters against a good team, and you cannot be spending those extra 5-10 seconds on a chase sometimes, which leads to them more likely to win because you don't waste time in this chase, and you can chase somebody else, and oh, they've got the perk as well, and it can just lead to this like sort of domino effect that can really change the outcome of a match. And this can also be the same with other games, such as MOBAs. I'm going to talk about Smite real quick. I played the game for quite a few years. I've gone back to it here and there, but I don't really play that much anymore. But back in, I think it was 2018, 2019, one of the characters had a pretty high win rate, but a low play rate. And they decided to buff this character, thinking it would get it more popular. Which it did, but unfortunately it turns out this character was really, really powerful at the time, but only a few people knew how to use her effectively. And this kind of led to a situation where they had to nerf her, so the people who didn't play her before stopped playing her again, and the people who enjoyed her before and had high win rates suddenly had a weaker character, and nothing really changed about the character. And these are just the mistakes that can be led to statistics and not really thinking about how players feel about certain characters. It's better to leave a character alone sometimes, or a weapon, or a card, or whatever you're dealing with. Sometimes it's better to leave it alone than to try and fix an issue and then just end up making it worse in the long term. But in the end of the day, I'm just another player on these equations to these changes, and so are you. And the reality is, developers aren't going to make everyone happy anytime. And there's a lot more stuff that goes into game balancing than I've already said here. Like, I've already mentioned really 2 things, 2.5 if you count feelings, but there is a lot that goes into it, and not everybody's going to be happy. But all we can really do is encourage developers to communicate and show appreciation when they do things right. And I think that's kind of where I'm going with this, to be honest. I feel like a lot of the times when I'm in communities, gaming communities, like, we get new stuff, and something's overpowered, people complain, and when they deal with it and the game gets into a good space, everybody's suddenly quiet. And I feel like that just leads to a situation where, you know, developers are human, you know, and they like to hear appreciation when they do something right. Would it be better if these OP stuff or these weak stuff never got into the game? Sure, but they're only human, they're doing their best, and like I said before, the teams aren't as big as they should be, because of reasons, usually, you know, money issues. You know, a lot of these games aren't as big as League of Legends, and even then they get stuff wrong, so it's just a way of gaming, and I think it's something we, you know, have to come to accept.